The cold didn't kill them. The sea didn't either. What could truly destroy a Viking was making a single mistake before winter closed the world around them. For centuries, the same image has been repeated. Barbaric men wrapped in furs, advancing fearlessly across impossible seas. But that image hides an uncomfortable question. Because the North Atlantic does not forgive, at temperatures that tear flesh and crack wood, no myth survives without a real method behind it. By the late 8th century, the coasts of Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark were hostile territory, even for their own inhabitants. Winters dropped to -40 degrees, weeks passed without sunlight, seas froze over, and storms swallowed entire fleets. And yet, from those very fjords, open boats set out across the North Sea, the Baltic, and the Atlantic, reaching Iceland, Greenland, and, around the year 1000, North America. By the end of this video, you'll understand that Viking survival wasn't the result of luck or blind heroism, but of a precise combination of technology, biology, culture, and a brutally honest relationship with death. But before we begin, I want to ask you to leave a like and subscribe so this family can keep growing. Hello, curious minds. Get ready. This is going to change the way you see the past. Welcome to Discovered History. In the year 793, when the first drakkar appeared off the coast of Lindisfarne, Europe couldn't comprehend what it was seeing. Not just because of the violence of the attack, but because of where the attackers came from. To reach that place, those men had sailed for days over icy waters, with no deck, no visible fire, no apparent protection. Roman and Christian logic said such a journey was impossible. And yet, it happened. Viking ships weren't just vessels, they were floating survival systems. Built using the clinker technique, overlapping oak planks. They offered flexibility against the waves, preventing the structure from splitting under the impact of cold seas. That flexibility was vital. Rigid wood shatters in extreme cold. Living, well-worked wood endures. They had no deck, but they had something more important. Absolute control of weight and balance. Every oar, every plank, every rope had a precise function. A heavier ship would have been a death sentence in icy waters. But the real secret wasn't only in the wood, it was in their bodies. Vikings didn't dress the way fiction portrays them. They didn't wear loose capes or decorative furs. They dressed in layers, a technique we now associate with modern mountaineering. First, untreated wool directly on the skin, itchy but capable of retaining heat even when wet. On top of that, a thicker layer of wool. Then furs turned inward to trap warm air. And finally, outer layers treated with animal fats that partially repelled water. It wasn't comfort, it was survival. A common mistake is thinking that the greatest enemy was freezing water. In reality, it was the wind. On board, with temperatures below zero, the wind sliced skin like blades. That's why Vikings obsessively covered their heads, necks, and wrists. Losing heat through those areas meant dying within hours. But even then, clothing wasn't enough. Real heat came from within. The Viking diet on long voyages was designed to generate constant energy. Dried meat, fermented fish, animal fat, butter, hard cheese. Nothing light, nothing balanced by modern standards. It was a hypercaloric diet meant to fuel muscles rowing for hours and bodies that needed to produce heat even at rest. Alcohol also played a role, though not the one people imagine. Beer and mead weren't consumed to warm up, but to maintain morale and reduce the perception of suffering. They knew alcohol didn't create real heat, but it helped them endure the night. And the nights were the true hell. Sleeping on an open boat, with the sea pounding the hull, under snow or freezing rain, required more than physical endurance. It required a kind of mental discipline few cultures ever developed. Vikings slept in shifts, shared body heat, used wool and fur sails as insulation, and shielded themselves from the wind using the boat's own structure. They never lit fires on board, ever. The risk was absolute. One mistake and everything ended. Here we find the first great historical contradiction. They weren't reckless savages. They were obsessively careful. Between the 9th and 10th centuries, Vikings perfected maritime routes that depended on weather, currents, and the position of the sun. They sailed in winter only when absolutely necessary. Most voyages were planned within very specific seasonal windows. Leaving too late meant being trapped by ice. Leaving too early meant freezing to death. Viking survival wasn't bravery, it was calculation. But even with all that, many died. Icelandic sagas are full of shipwrecks, frostbite, and men who fell asleep and never woke up. Failure wasn't hidden, it was accepted, because that acceptance created a culture where every mistake was analyzed, remembered, and passed on. That is the second great secret. Knowledge wasn't lost. Each generation inherited precise accounts of what to do and what not to do in cold seas, what clothes to wear, how much fat to bring, when to abandon a voyage, when to accept that there would be no return. Between 985 and 986, Erik the Red led the colonization of Greenland. Not because it was a hospitable place, but because he knew exactly how far his people could survive. The colonies thrived for centuries until the climate changed. When the Little Ice Age intensified in the 14th century, not even Viking knowledge was enough, and they disappeared. That is the final twist of this story. Vikings didn't conquer the cold, they respected it, and when that balance broke, they paid the price. Today, we admire their endurance as something almost supernatural, but their true greatness wasn't surviving minus 40 degrees Celsius in open boats. It was building an entire culture around a brutally simple question. What do we need to do today to avoid dying tomorrow? Perhaps that's why their legacy endures. Because in a modern world that blindly trusts technology, the Vikings remind us of something uncomfortable. Survival doesn't depend only on tools, but on understanding, accepting, and respecting the real limits of the environment. The question becomes inevitable. If you had to cross that same sea, in that same cold, with no promise of rescue and no second chances, how much of that ancestral knowledge would still live within you today? Remember to subscribe to the channel, leave us a like, and share the video with other history fans. You can activate the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming videos we'll be releasing about surprising events or ancient civilizations that shaped the world we live in today. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, here, we don't just tell history, we relive it together.